But how willing are we to be uncomfortable, to get dirty, to dirty our hands in order to touch the unclean, in order to tear down walls? This is really minor. This is so minor. Please don't think of this illustration as, isn't Sam special? Don't think of it that way, because this is so minor that it's laughable. But I was in a church, in another state. I was holding a revival. And there was a potluck that day because the evangelist was there. That was always great. That's a good thing about being an evangelist. No, there was a potluck that day, probably just happened to be that day. And so the minister came to me, and there was a lady at the altar, by the way. A lady came to the altar. There was 4 or 5 people at the altar, and this old lady was there kneeling. And I went there, and I put my hands on her, and man, I'm telling you, the odor. And you know what? You know, if you get to the worst situation in a nursing home, or the worst situation, when they haven't been changed and there's urine and they're dirty, you know, that kind of a thing. And she just smelled as if she hadn't had a bath in weeks, and the clothes were bad, and she's there at the altar weeping. And I'm praying with her, and as soon as we got done, the pastor comes over to me, and he says, "I'll show you what she cooked so you won't eat it." Now I understand what he's saying. He said, we always watch for her dish because it's probably... You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying? And so you know what? I talked to a person in the church and I said, what is that about? And they said, this lady, she always brings a full crock pot full of something, and it always goes home full. Do you get what I'm saying? What that would feel like to her? Don't touch her dish. You might get sick. Let me get sick, Jesus.
Yeah.
No, I mean, again, I'm not putting you in the box, but I'm saying that this was worse what Jesus was doing. This was not a dirty, hot dish. This was a spiritual thing. He crossed the line. And yes, I will tell you, not to brag, but because I was raised in a home that got dirty.
Yep.
My folks got dirty, down with drunks and everything, and bringing them in and hugging them and taking them in. And so that just doesn't faze me. And when the pastor said that and I looked at her dish, I thought, that's the hot dish I got a head for. And I didn't die, and I didn't even get sick. Maybe I would have. But I'm just trusting God. Now, you don't get it. You read these stories and you go, wasn't that nice of Jesus to do that? No, it was boundary breaking. It was spiritually a sin to the other Jews. But he's not in a box. But here's what's happening. God in flesh. God from the halls of heaven. God wrapped in a man. Her Savior never sinned, clean as a whistle, pure, holy, righteous, perfect. He's sipping. God is sipping from her cup. How low did Jesus go? How low did God go to reach you? through hell.
That's right.
John 4 is not a nice story of how God is loving, though it is. It is a challenge. It is a challenge to touch water jars, to sip where you don't want to sip in order to bring the Savior to people. It's a story about you and a story about me. It's a story about the church and what the church can look like when they are wholly committed to nothing but Jesus.